Welcome to True Crime Threads, where real crimes twist into deeper mysteries. Today, we reveal the shocking story of 5 prisoners sentenced to death after escaping a prison built on secrets. On the night of July 9, 2013, a powerful thunderstorm struck the isolated Red Hill Correctional Facility, a maximum security prison hidden deep in the southern forest of a fictional country. The storm arrived without warning. Wind howled through the trees, and heavy rain pounded against the walls of the prison. At exactly 11:47 p.m., a lightning bolt hit the main control tower, causing a total power failure. Within seconds, the security systems went dark. Surveillance cameras shut off. Motion sensors stopped working. Electronic door locks deactivated. For the first time in decades, the prison was blind. 5 inmates housed in Block Derek Klein, Jonah Wells, Victor Blaine, Curtis Reno, and Daniel Craig immediately. Their plan had waited months for the perfect moment, and this storm gave them what they needed. The prison's layout was known to them. Daniel had worked in the library, gaining access to old construction blueprints. He discovered something. Most staff had forgotten a storm drain tunnel that ran under the western fence, once used during Red Hill's early construction days, but later sealed and removed from updated records. For weeks, the inmates had faked repairs in the laundry and kitchen areas to collect basic tools. They worked in secret during their janitorial shifts, slowly prying open the entrance to the tunnel from the floor of a disused storage room. They reinforced the first 10 meters with stolen wood and covered the rest with tarps and gravel to prevent collapse. Every move was timed with nightly guard shifts and background noise, but they needed total darkness to escape unnoticed. The storm made that possible. As the storm raged outside, the 5 prisoners made their move. They slipped out of their cells, bypassing motionless cameras and quiet corridors. Their path led through the laundry room, then into the storage unit, and finally into the narrow crawl space of the tunnel. The mud was thick and the air was tight, but they crawled silently through the confined space. Water from the rain began to leak in. Still, they pushed forward. After nearly 40 minutes, they emerged beyond the prison fence, hidden behind overgrown trees. By the time the backup generators powered up and the guards realized something was wrong, it was too late. A head count confirmed the escape. Panic followed. Officers searched the grounds. Helicopters circled overhead. Bloodhounds were brought in, but the rain had already washed away all scent trails. The tunnel had collapsed shortly after the last man exited. Destroyed by loose mud and water pressure, it left no evidence of how they had escaped or where they had gone. News broke the next morning. Every channel carried the headline, 5 inmates vanished during storm. Red Hill's reputation was shattered. The warden was suspended. Families of victims demanded answers, but authorities had nothing. The escape was too clean, too well planned. Investigators couldn't understand how 5 men with no known connections had executed such a flawless plan. The country launched its largest manhunt in years. Borders were tightened. Airports were alerted. Every major city watched for their faces. Yet not a single confirmed sighting was reported. The 5 men had vanished, not just from Red Hill, but from the world. Months later, a librarian in a nearby town discovered an old prison map hidden inside a donated Bible. The book had been left in a public donation box outside the local church. When the librarian opened it, several pages near the back were loose. Tucked between them was a thin, folded, paper-edged, yellowed, and clearly handled many times. On it was a detailed layout of Red Hill Correctional Facility. Certain paths were highlighted in red ink, and a dotted line led directly to the drainage tunnel that ran beneath Block C. The librarian, uncertain of its meaning, contacted local authorities. Within hours, it was confirmed to be an original map of Red Hill's early design. It was dated from the 1970s and bore official seals. Investigators traced the map to Daniel Craig, one of the escapees. During his time in prison, Daniel had volunteered regularly in the library. Records showed he was often assigned to scan and organize old facility files stored in the archives. He had unrestricted access to outdated construction documents, many of which were never digitized. It became clear that he had found the tunnel plans during this time and kept a copy for himself. The Bible, authorities believed, had been left behind on purpose, either as a message or as a discarded item during their flight. This clue changed the entire direction of the investigation. The escape was no longer viewed as a lucky opportunity triggered by a storm. It was now considered a highly calculated operation. The tunnel wasn't discovered by chance. It was known, studied, and exploited. The timing of the escape, aligned perfectly with a rare natural blackout, began to look less coincidental. As investigators reviewed prison records again, they noticed something unusual. All 5 inmates had been moved to Block C within the same 4-month period before the escape. Each had been in different wings previously, with no overlaps. There had been no documented reason for the relocation. Transfer requests were missing. Daily logs from the time contained gaps, and one shift officer claimed his signature on a transfer form had been forged. What started as a simple prison escape now appeared as something far more coordinated. Digging deeper, authorities tried to uncover any link among the 5 men before their time at Red Hill. Their crimes were unrelated. They were from different cities, different age groups, with no shared associates, but someone had placed them together. Someone with the power to move inmates quietly, without raising attention. No prison administrator admitted authorizing the transfers. Surveillance data from that period had been deleted due to a routine system upgrade, leaving no digital trail of who issued the orders. Things took a darker turn when IT specialists discovered that just 5 days before the escape, someone had accessed the prison's internal system and wiped all digital records relating to Block C transfers. The deletion was surgical. Targeted files were removed without disrupting the rest of the system. There were no logs of access. Whoever did it had deep knowledge of the system's architecture. Prison staff denied involvement. An internal audit revealed no evidence of an external breach, suggesting that the deletion had occurred from inside the facility. With no clear leads, the theory that the escape was internally supported gained strength. The possibility that someone within Red Hill had helped the 5 inmates escape became more likely. Someone had covered their tracks, erased their movement, and ensured their plan would succeed. But that person, like the prisoners, had disappeared without a trace. In 2015, 2 years after the escape, a tip led police to a small, nearly abandoned mining town called Stawell's End, about 100 kilometers from Red Hill. The town had been deserted for over a decade. After the collapse of its mining industry, only a few elderly residents remained, and most of the buildings were boarded up, crumbling, or overtaken by weeds. A local ranger had reported strange activity in the area, footprints near old houses, smoke rising from chimneys thought to be unused, and fresh tire marks near the edge of the forest. Authorities moved in quietly, searching the area without alerting the media. They began inspecting abandoned homes one by one. In the 3rd house they entered, a small, run-down structure near the end of a broken road. They found evidence that confirmed the fugitives had been there. Inside, the dust had been swept away. The floorboards were clean. A mattress lay on the ground, still warm. Several empty food cans were stacked in the corner. In the back of the house, beneath a trapdoor hidden under a rug, they discovered a basement. The basement had been turned into a temporary shelter. There were 3 makeshift beds, piles of clothes, and a small generator. Maps were pinned to the wall, some with handwritten notes. There were lists of towns, supply points, and escape routes. What stood out was a notebook filled with detailed observation notes about train schedules, police patrols, and marked calendars. DNA testing confirmed that Victor Blaine and Curtis Reno had recently occupied the space. Traces of Daniel Cray's fingerprints were also found on one of the maps. There was no sign of Jonah Wells or Derek Klein. The house appeared to have been used as a base, possibly a meeting point, and was abandoned just days before police arrived. The journal included a single cryptic word, scribbled multiple times, Leviathan. It was written on walls, underlined in notes, and scratched into the wood of the basement door. Investigators could not determine its meaning at first. It didn't match any known operation, location, or code, but the way it appeared repeatedly suggested importance, possibly a plan, a person, or an organization. The discovery of the house confirmed that at least 3 of the 5 fugitives have remained in contact and were operating as a group. It also revealed their ability to survive undetected in harsh conditions, relying on secrecy and coordination. The layout of the maps and the timing written in the notes indicated they had not only escaped, but had continued moving through rural areas, staying ahead of capture by carefully avoiding surveillance zones. Despite the promising leads, the fugitives remained out of reach. Authorities believed they had been tipped off before the search began, possibly by someone monitoring police movements. The evidence from Stawazin raised more questions than answers. Who was helping them? What did Leviathan mean? And how much longer could they keep moving? No arrests were made. The media was not informed of the search, and the incident was never made public. The house was sealed, the basement cleared, and all materials were taken to a secure facility. But within law enforcement, the case took a new shape. The escape was no longer a closed chapter. It had become something larger, organized, deliberate, and still unfolding. By 2016, 3 of the 5 escapees were caught in different countries. Daniel Cray was found first, living quietly in a remote village where he worked as a mechanic under a false identity. He had grown a beard, changed his posture, and avoided digital records entirely. He rarely spoke to anyone, used cash only, and kept no phone. A suspicious customer tipped off local authorities after noticing unusual scars that matched descriptions from old police bulletins. Once arrested, Daniel refused to speak during interrogation. He offered no explanation, no defense, and no request for legal support. Several months later, Victor Blaine was caught while living on the coast, posing as a fisherman. He had learned the trade from locals and blended in easily, working long hours at sea and keeping a quiet profile. An immigration sweep uncovered forged documents that linked him to a deceased man from another province. His fingerprints confirmed his identity. Victor attempted to escape during the arrest, but was quickly subdued. Curtis Reno was the last of the 3 to be captured. He had been trying to cross a heavily guarded border, using counterfeit paperwork and a stolen vehicle. His behavior raised suspicion, and when questioned, he panicked and fled. After a short chase, he was taken into custody. His arrest revealed a small notebook hidden in his coat, which contained coded messages and meeting points marked with dates. Investigators believed it might have been a communication guide for someone still at large. All 3 were returned to the country where Red Hill stood, but instead of being tried for their original crimes, they were charged under a newly introduced law called the Security Breach Capital Clause. This law, passed just weeks before their arrival, made high-level prison escape punishable by death if it was considered a threat to national stability. The trials were brief. Evidence focused entirely on the escape, the planning, and the consequences that followed. The court treated their coordinated breakout as an act of internal sabotage rather than a mere flight from incarceration. The death sentences were issued without the possibility of appeal. The government justified the decision by arguing that the escape had endangered critical infrastructure, compromised public trust, and revealed weaknesses in national security. There was no mention of their original convictions. The escape alone was used to define their punishment. Human rights groups protested the decision, calling it excessive and politically motivated. International organizations requested clemency, but the government declined to respond. Within weeks, the executions were carried out in secrecy. The media was only informed after the process was complete. No public funerals were allowed. Their families were given sealed notices with minimal information. Their final statements, if any were made, were never released. The government declared the case closed, stating that justice had been served and that national order had been restored. The outcome shocked many. The punishment, swift and final, raised questions about whether the government was protecting security or hiding something deeper. With the remaining 2 fugitives still missing, the fear grew that they might meet the same fate that they held the truth behind the escape, the hidden messages, and the meaning behind Leviathan. The last 2 fugitives, Derek Klein and Jonah Wells, remained missing for years. Despite the efforts of law enforcement and intelligence units, no verified sightings or confirmed traces of their whereabouts were ever reported. Their names slowly faded from public attention, but internally, The case was never closed. Special units kept files open, monitored financial activity, and followed any unusual travel records that might point toward movement. Yet nothing surfaced. It was as if the two men had vanished completely, leaving no signal, no mistake, and no pattern behind. For years, the trail remained cold. In 2021, a break came unexpectedly. A drone camera operator filming footage for a nature documentary was flying over a dense forest region near an old, unused railway line when the drone caught sudden movement. The footage showed what looked like a figure quickly disappearing into the trees. The operator reviewed the footage and reported it to local authorities, who forwarded it to federal investigators due to its proximity to a previously noted route connected to the fugitives. A tactical team was dispatched to investigate. After a 2-day search, they discovered a hidden entrance beneath the collapsed side of an abandoned rail station. Behind the debris was a narrow path that led underground. Inside, they found a makeshift bunker built from salvaged materials. The walls were lined with insulation, the floors covered in tarps. There was a small stove, canned food, and a filtration system pulling water from a nearby stream. On a desk in the corner sat a stack of journals, all written in the same hand. The room was silent, lit only by fading battery-powered lamps. The body of Jonah Wells was found in a back chamber, surrounded by open notebooks and a single empty bottle. A medical report confirmed death by poisoning, with traces of a fast-acting compound that he had likely taken intentionally. Investigators recovered pages filled with entries that changed everything about the case. Jonah had written obsessively over the years, detailing not only life in hiding but the truth behind the Red L escape. The journals explained that the 5 men had been subjects in an unauthorized rehabilitation experiment, secretly funded by a defense agency. They were chosen based on psychological profiles and transferred to Red L under fabricated charges to observe their behavior in a controlled environment. The project, referred to by the codename Leviathan, was intended to test deep brain manipulation and social dynamics under pressure. The experiment had been ordered shut down after internal disagreements, but the 5 inmates were never released or reprocessed. Abandoned and aware of what had been done to them, they escaped to survive and to expose the truth. Jonah's final entries ended that Derek was still alive and had left the bunker 2 weeks prior, having to deliver a final set of documents to an unknown contact. Authorities tried to trace the lead, but Derek was never located. The bunker was sealed, and the story remained classified. Months later, an anonymous data leak published redacted documents that matched names, dates, and program outlines from Jonah's journals. Despite denials, the pieces confirmed the existence of Leviathan. The escape had never been just about freedom. It had been about erasing a secret that was never meant to be discovered. The full truth, carried by one man, remained somewhere out in the world.